Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ann Scanello, and I'm one of the tutors with the Seeds of Literacy program. In today's lesson, I'm going to be focusing on how to subtract fractions. The problems and the information that I'm going to be sharing in this video lesson comes from 3 of the packets that you might have received from Seeds of Literacy. So I put the front page or the cover page on each one so that you kind of know what specifically where to find the problems and some of the information that I'm going to be giving in the lesson.
Right, okay.
Okay. First thing I want to talk about, though, is some fraction vocabulary. And the first one is one that I used to struggle with, numerator and denominator.
Okay.
The top number is the numerator and the bottom number is the denominator. And when I go through the lesson, I'm going to be using those words all the time. And so I did something on the screen that I always do for myself or used to do for myself as a math student. I would always have notes. And before I started working with fractions, I would put the N over the D to remind me, oh yeah, the numerator's the one on the top, denominator's the one on the bottom. So throughout today's lesson, you're going to see this blue N over D on the screen. That's just my notes in case you want to reference it. Oh yeah, she's saying denominator, that's the number on the bottom. Okay. The next thing is fractions in general. One way you can define them is that it's the part over the whole. And you see them 2 ways. The whole could be a single object. Like let's pretend like this circle down here is a pizza pie. So it's one whole pizza, but we've got, it's divided into 4 pieces, makes the whole, that's the bottom number. And then 3 of those pieces are shaded, so that's the numerator. So the part that is shaded is 3 over the whole is 4 pieces. So the fraction would be 3/4. Another way we see fractions is instead of like a pizza divided up, we have objects in a group. So in this one, we've got 5 objects in the group. So 5 objects is our total or our whole, and 4 of those are shaded. So 4/5 means that's the part that is shaded out of the whole group. Okay, now equivalent fractions are really important when we're talking about subtracting and also when we're talking about adding fractions, because that's what we're going to spend a lot of time doing today, is writing equivalent fractions. So you can see on the screen, and I'm actually going to start on the far right side, we've got our square divided up into 4 pieces, and one of those pieces is shaded. So that represents the fraction 1/4. So we can pretend like this is a cake. I like cake. Okay. So the middle cake is also square. This time they cut it up into 20 slices and they shaded 5 of them. So now the fraction to represent this picture is 5/20. But you can see that the actual amount of cake you would be eating, whether you ate these 5 smaller pieces or this one larger piece, it's the same as 1/4. Same thing if we were to cut that cake into 100 teeny tiny slices and we ate 25 of those. 25 out of 100 slices is going to give you the same value or the same amount as if you only divided the cake into 4 slices and you ate 1. So we say that those are all equivalent fractions. 25 100ths, 5/20ths, and 1/4 are all fractions with the same value. So you follow me so far, Talisha?
Yes.
Okay. So a little more on equivalent fractions. Okay. in order to create equivalent fractions, you're going to have to multiply or divide both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. Okay, so look at this one down here where I have the orange circle around it. The fraction was 1/3. And if we multiply both the top and the bottom times 2, we create the equivalent fraction of 2/6. But then the one on the bottom here in green, my original fraction was 2/4. I want to reduce that to lower terms. Going to have to do that a lot with our answers today. We're going to divide the top and the bottom. They both divide evenly by 2 to turn it into 1/2. Okay, so you follow that, how to raise a fraction to higher terms or how to reduce a fraction?
Yes.
Okay. So now we're going to practice a little bit, and these aren't too tough. So the first one is a picture of, we'll call it a pizza, and 6/8 of the pizza are shaded. So what is an equivalent fraction, or could you reduce the fraction 6/8? What would that be, Taylisha?
You can reduce that to 1/2.
Not exactly.
No?
Remember, the strategy was we're going to have to find a number that divides evenly into both 6 and 8.
Okay. 2?
They both divide. You could divide both of those by 2. So what is 6 divided by 2?
3.
And what is 8 divided by 2?
4.
Nice job. So what is the new fraction that you've just created?
3/4.
You are perfect. And I showed, like we did in that first picture when we had the cake, we were dividing into more and more pieces. One way to look at this picture, you could ignore all the black lines in there. And instead, we could have divided this pizza into just 4 slices, and that's shown by the red lines. And if we did that, 3 of the 4 total slices are shaded, and so the equivalent fraction is 3/4. But you did it the other way. You did it using division, and that's how we're going to find reduced fractions through it. Okay, now the second picture here, it's a group, and we've got 2 bottles out of 4 are shaded. So we could say that the fraction is 2/4 are shaded. But we could also reduce that fraction. What would it be if we reduced that?
You would have divided by 2.
Nice. And so what would that give us?
1/2.
Perfect. That's it. It would be, we're going to divide the top and the bottom by 2, and that's going to give us the answer 1/2. Now I'm going to show you, when I'm typing fractions on a keyboard, I always want them to come out like my 3/4 did over here with my 3 over my 4. Sometimes the computer won't do that, and it will, but whether it's written side by side or on top of each other, it's the same thing. Okay, so moving on. The next vocabulary term we need to talk about is improper fractions. And an improper fraction just means that the numerator, which remember that's the number on top, is equal to or larger than the denominator. So it's an improper fraction if the top number is the same or larger than the bottom number. Okay. Now I will say improper fractions are not incorrect answers. Most of the time they will ask you to supply your answer in a mixed number, but technically the improper fraction is still a correct answer. And when you move along and you're working in algebra and linear algebra, you're going to see there are times when actually we might prefer the fraction to be an improper fraction. But most fraction lessons where we're just practicing adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, you're going to be asked to not leave it as an improper fraction, but to change that into a mixed number. So, but here's the examples of an improper fraction. If we had 4 over 4, that's just like saying, you know, we divided this pizza into 4
That would be a whole.
Right, and it's one whole. So 4 over 4 is the same thing as 1. Now the second example here, 7/4. So now we have a whole pizza plus some more. So what would the mixed number be for 7/4, Alicia?
4, 1, and 3 over 4.
That's it. That's it. Yep.
Okay.
1 3/4, and actually that's on my next screen. I forgot that one's on my next screen. Okay. So you turn it into 1 3/4. So 7/4 and 1 3/4 represent the same amount. So a mixed number is when we have a whole number together with a fraction. So like 1 3/4. But you obviously are already familiar with those. So they represent the same amount. Okay. So now improper fractions and mixed numbers. So the first one they did for you, we've got 3 out of 3 makes the whole. So that's one whole. So number 2 down here, the first thing I want you to do, Talisha, is to write the improper fraction, and then I want you to tell me the mixed number. So see if you can do that for number 2.
The improper fraction. Okay. Would it be 4 over 5?
You're really close. Okay, each pizza is divided into 4 sections. And so that's, you know, the whole. 4 sections makes a whole. So that's going to be at the bottom. That's going to be the denominator. So 4 is at the bottom. How many of those fourths do you have in that picture?
4.
No, actually, we've got
5.
1, 2, 3. We have 5 of them. So the improper fraction is 5/4.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, anytime you've got the first number or the top number is bigger than the smaller one, you know you have more than one whole. You've got a whole plus a little bit more. So that's going to be the mixed number we're about to write. What would the mixed number be for 5/4?
1 and 1 over 4.
That's it. 1 1/4. Perfect. Okay, number 3 is just showing us again, we have all 8 pieces. So it could be written as 8 over 8, but it's the same thing as one whole. But number 4, see if you can do that one. That's also divided in 8 pieces. So what is the improper fraction? So we know that we have our one whole there, the one whole right here, is divided in 8 pieces. So that tells us that the denominator or the
Wait, what number are we on?
Number 4. We're working on number 4 right here.
Okay. 9 over 7.
Well, there's
9 over 8. Wait,
You're really close.
because I'm miscounting. 10 over 8.
Perfect. That's it. Yeah, because we've got 10 of them. I mean, we have 8 of them here, 9, 10. 10 eighths is correct. So now see if you can write that as a mixed number for me.
1 and 2 over 8.
Perfect. Now this one is a little tricky because we had 2 over 8, which was absolutely correct, but 2 eighths can be reduced. It's one of those situations where it's like, oh yeah, 2 divides evenly into both 2 and 8. And when we do that, when we reduce it, the answer is 1 1/4. Good job.
Oh, okay. Do we reduce even if they don't tell us to?
Yep.
Okay. Because that's
They
the trick.
will, yes, you will always be accepted. And it's one of those things like 1 2/8. Technically, that's not a wrong answer, but it's all about formatting and the proper way to do things. And so 1 2/8 just looks weird. It's confusing if we let people all leave their answers in different forms. So it's kind of customary to always reduce your answer. Yeah. So you would 1 2/8, you would be kind of expected to know, oh, I'm going to have to reduce 2/8 to 1 1/4. Okay. Okay, let's try number 5 up there. We've got a box. And the first one's divided into 4 equal sections. That's our whole. And then we've got a second figure there. So what's our improper fraction for this figure?
Seven over 6.
You're really close. The whole square is divided into 4 sections.
Oh, not that one. Oh, we're up here. Okay. Number 5.
We're on number 5. I'm sorry. And I can't really do my little thing because the go-to meeting stuff is in the way. But so number 5 up here.
7 over 4.
Perfect. Nice. And so now write that as a mixed number for me. What would that be?
That would be 1 and 3 over 4.
Perfect. How about number 6? What would the improper fraction be?
That's the one I was looking at.
Oh, you've already done that one. Okay, tell me again what you said, because I think you were right.
Okay, what did I think I said? 7 over 6.
Well, not quite. We've got one box by itself is divided up into 3 sections. So those are thirds. Each one of these little pieces is actually a third of a whole. So what would it be?
I don't know. I have no idea. Are we counting each rectangle as a 3?
Yeah, the rectangles with the dotted lines, they're all going to be a third. So how many of those rectangles do we have?
It's 6 of them, so it would be 8. So it would be 7 over 18.
It's going to be 7
over 3. Okay.
See, and they get very tricky. This lesson, honestly, even though it's presented in a big curriculum as one of the early kind of skills, adding and subtracting fractions, it is one of the most difficult lessons. I mean, not this, but adding and subtracting fractions, one of the most difficult skills that any student has to learn. And I will say, sticking it out and working really hard and learning the fractions, that can be a very challenging thing to do. But if you can get through fractions and you can get really good with these skills, many of the other things that you're going to be learning about in geometry and algebra are actually much easier to learn than this. So we really got to kind of buckle down here. It was 7/3 because each square is divided in 3 sections. So one of those little sections is a third. But we have more than 3 of them. we actually have 7 of those little rectangles. So the improper fraction is 7/3. So Taylisha, see if you can turn that one into a mixed number. So the wholes plus the fraction. Oh, Taylisha, are you still there?
Yes. Is it 2 1/3?
That's it. Perfect.
Okay. Great.
2 1/3. Nice job.
Thank you.
Okay. The next one, now we're going to rewrite. We're going to rewrite these fractions with a higher denominator. And so the first one they did for you, so they said 1/2. If we wanted to rewrite that as an equivalent fraction, we want the same value, but we want our denominator or our bottom number to be 8, what would the top be? And they said that it would be, let me do it, that it would be 4, because 2 times by 4 equals 8, so we're going to have to multiply the top by 4. So we can call that scaling up 4 times. But so that's how they came up with 4 there. Now down here, we're going to do the one here that says 5/6 equals blank over 24. And again, you can see 6 times by 4 equals 24. So because the denominator or the bottom got 4 times bigger, we need to make the top 4 times bigger. So 5/6 would be how many 24ths?
5/6. 5 times 6.
No, it would be.
Or 5 times 4. It would be 5
yes.
times 4. It would be
Perfect.
20.
Yes.
20
That's
24ths.
20 24ths is correct. Now let's do 1/3 equals how many 6? Now I didn't put it in there this time. To get 3 to be a 6, what did we have to multiply by?
2.
Good. So now you're going to have to do that at the top.
2. It would be 2.
That's it.
2 6.
1/3 is the same thing as 2 6. And we're going to have to use these skills when we're actually start subtracting the fractions. We're going to have to make sure that we can make our denominators be bigger numbers or sometimes smaller numbers. So let's try down here. 3/4 equals blank over 8. See if you can do it. What would, if we want a denominator to be 8, what's our numerator or our top number going to be?
6 8. 6 8.
Yep, that's it. 6/8. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to go the other direction. We're going to rewrite with a lower denominator, and you'll hear people say reduce the fraction. It's what we already talked about this a little bit, and you already reduced at least 1 or 2 for me. So they did the first one. They said 3/9 equals 1/3. And I think I put in. Okay, so yeah. So for 4/10 right below it, we know that we could divide 4 and 10 both by 2 and come up with, it divides evenly. So 4/10, if I was going to reduce that, what would the answer be?
2/5.
That's it. So now let's look at 12/20. So now you're going to have to think to yourself, what divides evenly into both 12 and 20? Can you think of a number that you divide in there?
You can use 2 or 4.
That's awesome that you came up with 4 as well, because you always want to find the largest number that divides evenly into both. Most students would look at this and they would figure out 2. But when they divided top and bottom by 2, they would come up with 6/10. And then they would have to do a second step of dividing both of them by 2 again.
Right.
You figured out that 4 divides into both of them. So you have saved yourself a step. So go ahead and do that. Reduce by dividing the numerator and the denominator by 4. What's it going to be?
It would be 3/5. And you can't reduce that.
You're exactly correct. It is 3/5, and that does not reduce anymore. Okay, 4/8 over here. See if you can reduce that one for me.
You can reduce it by 4 and get a half.
That's exactly what you can do. How about 8/12? Try reducing that one for me.
You can do 4. 4 would be 2/3.
Yes, it would. How about 8/10? What would that reduce to?
It would be 4/5.
Nice. You're really good with your, I think you're really good with your multiplication tables, and you're strong with your 4s. And 4s are hard for a lot of students, but I'm guessing that you worked really hard on those at one point, and you're pretty good with them.
I did.
I can tell. I mean, I've taught math for a long time, and I can tell when someone is that strong with their 4s. Okay, so now the next vocabulary term is common denominator. And remember, I have my little cheat sheet, my little neat notes over here. When I say denominator, I'm talking about the bottom number. So whenever we're adding or subtracting fractions, we have to have the denominator or the bottom number be the same. And so they've got the example here. It says 2/3 plus 3/4. Well, the denominator is a 3 on the first one and a 4 on the second one. So we have to make some adjustments. So it says here, you have to write out the multiples of both 3 and 4. And if you made a list of all the multiples, now you go through both lists and you choose the smallest number that's on both lists. And in this case, that happens to be 12. 12 is what we call the least common denominator. So we know that in order to solve this problem, we're going to have to write 2/3 and 3/4 both in terms of twelfths. Okay. Now, in order to rewrite 2/3 as twelfths, it would become 8/12. And 3/4 written as twelfths would become 9/12. So now we've got some fractions that we can add. We've got 8/12 plus 9/12 equals 17/12. I think I'm supposed to be, oh yeah, I forgot. I was supposed to be circling all these things. Okay, so we've got 8/12 plus 9/12 equals 17/12. And 17/12 is an improper fraction that can be rewritten as a mixed number of 1 and 5/12. Do you think you followed most of that, Taylisha?
Yes.
Okay, good. And they have a little note at the bottom that I thought was really helpful. I can get it to click. Okay, try that. There it is. A shortcut to finding the least common denominator, because it's not really practical to make out a complete full list of multiples for all the numbers. A shortcut can be to take the two denominators and multiply them together. And you're not always guaranteed to have the least common denominator or the smallest possible number, but that will always give you a common denominator. When I'm working with a lot of students, I find that a lot of them do that. They just say, instead of making both these lists, they'll just multiply the two denominators, and that's going to be their common denominator. Okay. So now we're going to practice subtracting like fractions. Okay, so we've got the problem, the way they write it, and these are actually from the Seeds of Literacy packets. I used the direction pages and some of their examples because later on, when you go back and you're working through this packet, you know, I want you to see the way they formatted their example, and hopefully it'll make more sense to you. So the problem they're telling us is subtract 3/8 from 7/8. And then they wrote that problem down for us right here. And they chose to write it up and down. And they have a reason for that, and we'll talk about it later. Okay, so when they did that, 7/8 minus 3/8, we just subtract the two numerators. The denominator, the bottom number, stays the same, and the answer is 4/8. And then they're showing us down here that we can reduce 4/8 and it becomes 1/2, and that's our answer. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of make the point. They originally decided to write the problem going up and down, 7/8 minus 3/8. For some people, it might be easier to connect or to understand if they had written it side by side. So this problem, up and down, circled in purple, is the same problem that I wrote over here in black, side by side. And it's going to have the same answer. On mine, I like looking at it like that because I see my denominators are the same. I just do 7 minus 3 equals 4. My denominator is an 8, and then I still simplify. Okay, so now this one is, another example of subtracting like fractions. Okay, so again, the problem is subtract 2 1/4 from 5 3/4. They wrote the problem up and down again. It's the same problem as 5 3/4 minus 2 1/4. Okay, so their first step, I'm going back to the purple circle. This is the way they wrote their problem. The denominator, or the bottom number of our fractions, are the same. So we are ready now to subtract the fractions. 3/4 minus 1/4 is 2/4. And now I can subtract my whole numbers. 5 minus 2 equals 3. And so my answer is 3 2/4. Again, that's not proper form. I'm going to have to reduce 2/4 to be 1/2. And my final answer is 3 1/2.
Okay,
Now,
so
I could have done the same thing. 3 2/4 and gotten 3 1/2 if I had written it going horizontally instead of vertically. Okay, now this one is subtracting fractions from whole numbers. And I actually had a student yesterday. I was doing some of the teletutoring, and I had a student, and she was on this packet, and the problem she was working on was very similar to this first one. So it says subtract 5/8 from 1. And they wrote the problem like this, with the 1 minus the 5/8. And she was very confused just by the way that looked. And she was like, why do they have the 1 to the left? And why is the fraction? They did that because for formatting, it's a way they can get all of their work or show all of their work in a smaller amount of space on their paper. In order to do the subtraction, we're going to have to rewrite 1 as 8/8 because we know we're going to need both numbers in our subtraction problem to have the same denominator. So they kind of gave themselves room over here to the right to rewrite 1 as 8/8 and then minus 5/8. And then the answer, 8 minus 5 equals 3. And then the denominator stays the same.
Okay.
There we go. So it was the same problem as 1 minus 5/8. If I had written it horizontally, I would have just shown that 1 is the same thing as 8/8 minus my 5/8. Then I just subtract across the top to get 3, and my denominator stays the same. Okay, now you're going to practice regrouping. So if we had the whole number 1 and we wanted to turn it into thirds, how many thirds would we have?
Three over 3.
That is correct. Now, number 2, oh, wait, let me see how I did this. No, I'm sorry. We're going across this time because we have to do the whole number 1. So 1 would be how many fourths?
4 fourths.
You're awesome. And 1 would be how many twelfths? Way over on the right side.
12.
That's it. Okay, we get a little trickier down below here. So now we have the number 3. And if I'm having to subtract a fraction that has eighths from it, I need to regroup 3 to be 2 wholes and how many eighths?
Hmm.
I'm going to show you this one because it's weird.
Okay.
It's not weird. It's more simple than our brain is expecting it to be. That's what it is. Okay. So they're saying that 3 is the same thing as having 2 plus 8/8 is the same thing as 1. So it's kind of like this is 2 plus 1 more. We would never, if we ever saw an answer written that way, 2 and 8/8, it's like that just looks strange. I mean, it makes more sense to write a 3. But when we're subtracting and we have to have a common denominator, we have to understand how to rewrite 3 this way so that we could come back and subtract eighths from it. And we'll practice that in just a minute. Okay, so the next one. 2 is the same thing as 1 and how many thirds?
Okay, we just did that one over there. 1.
Well, it's going to be 1 whole. We need it to be a total of 2. So we have 1 whole, and how many more thirds? We actually are going to need 2 wholes. So how many thirds would make a whole?
7?
Not 7. Look at your screen.
No.
Can you see my face?
Yeah. 3.
How many? 3. And that's it.
3.
And
Okay.
this is the kind of regrouping. We have to do a ton of this when we're subtracting fractions. And I think a lot of students never really get this part. And that's why subtracting fractions winds up being difficult. But all this means is that 2, another way to write 2 is to write it as 1 whole plus another 3 thirds. 3 thirds is a whole.
Equal to
So
1.
whole plus another whole makes 2. You got it? Does that kind of make sense, sort of?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try the last one over here. 5 equals 4, and how many 6?
It would be 6.
That's it. Perfect.
It would be 6.
Now that one thing, when you're subtracting fractions, you do a lot of the same stuff over and over and over and over, kind of like we did on these practices. So hopefully it will kind of sink in. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about, subtracting fractions from whole numbers. So now we're going to practice this in real life. So their problem was, they said to subtract, see if I can make this thing advance. We need to subtract 2 thirds from 5. And the way you would write that, they wrote it vertically, 5 minus 2 thirds. And then in order to do that, they had to rewrite the number 5 as 4 3/3. Do you see where they did that?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they needed to do that is because we're about to subtract 2/3, and we have to have the denominators be the same.
Okay.
Then they wrote their problem, 4 3/3 minus 2/3, and that equals 4 1/3. Okay? And so now we're going to practice some of these. And this first problem here, that's the problem my student had yesterday. And I know it's strange the way it looks, and it's not, when you're new to subtracting fractions, or when you haven't subtracted fractions in a long time, it can be very tricky. But see if you can do that one. So we're going to have to rewrite 1 in terms of fourths. What's that going to be?
That's going to be 4/4.
Good. I have to remember. Oh, yeah. And so we rewrote it as 4/4, and now we can subtract the 3/4. So what's the answer to 1 minus 3/4?
1.
1 what?
1. 4 minus 4 is 0. So I don't know where you put under 1.
Okay. So be careful.
Oh, okay. It'll be 1/4 because the denominator stays the same.
That's exactly right. And that's
Okay.
true.
Remember that.
Yeah. There's so much to hold in your head with fractions.
It is.
Really important. There is so much. And I'm telling you, I have taught linear algebra. I've taught all kinds of geometry. I teach probability. And I tell my students the 2 skills that I think are the hardest are adding and subtracting fractions. And then when you get to adding and subtracting negative numbers, those 2 skills are really challenging. But a lot of the higher level stuff, once you've mastered those skills, the higher level stuff is much easier to learn. So just saying, work hard now, and then it'll pay off later. Okay, so now I think we're doing this problem over here. So 1 minus 5/8. So I don't remember how much what would that one be? We would have to regroup 1 into eighths. What would that be?
It would be 3/8.
I think you are correct. And you are correct. Nice job. Okay, now we're on problem number 4 down here. It's 2 minus 1/3. What's that one going to be?
It would be 2/2. No, it would be 2/3.
Nice. So tell me the whole answer together. You told it to me in 2 different parts.
Okay. It will be 1/3. Wait.
1.
Wait.
Okay, I don't. So the 2 would regroup as 1 3/3. And then 3/3 minus 1/3 is how much?
3/3. 2 over. Is it going to be a negative?
Nope.
Okay.
You said it before. You said, I did show more of it than I thought I did. Sorry, I would have put this up before.
Oh,
Okay.
It will be 3/3. Okay, I think I said 2/3.
You were correct, because I don't have the answer up yet. Let me put the answer up. There it is. Okay.
Okay.
So the 2, and originally you said there's going to be a 1, because we rewrote 2 as 1 3/3. And these are like those problems we were practicing a minute ago. So we could say, 2 and 1 3/3, they have the same value, because this is like, that's a 1 and 3/3 is the same thing, or has the value of 1. So this is a 1 and another 1 would be 2. So they just rewrote 2 as 1 3/3. And then we can subtract 1/3. The first thing we do is subtract the fraction. So 3 minus 1 is 2, and we leave the thirds on the bottom.
Okay.
But remember, we still had this whole number over here. We had the whole number of 1, and we didn't have a whole number, so that's kind of like 0. 1 minus 0 is going to be 1. So the answer is 1 2/3. That's very tricky. There is a lot going on there.
Okay, I get it now.
Why don't you? Well, you say you get it. The next one, I think.
And then it comes in. Yeah.
The next one. See what you come up with on the next one.
Okay. Okay, 4 and 4 over 4 minus 3/4.
Yes. So what is 4/4 minus 3/4 going to be?
Four and 1 over 4.
You are awesome. Look at me. I was trying to write it up for you on my whiteboard, but you got it before I had a chance to do that.
Oh, okay.
Good job.
Thank you.
So the answer is 4 1/4. Nice. That one was a very tricky one.
Yeah, it was.
Oh yeah, they get nasty. Okay, so the next one, we're going to do some subtraction with regrouping. Okay, so here the problem says they want us to subtract 2/3 from 6 1/4. And so I kind of circled where they wrote the problem at the top in red. And our first step is going to be to regroup the 6. Actually, let me do this one. See if I can get it to advance. Okay, we're going to regroup the 6 as 5 1 4/4. So they're showing that to you right here. So the problem is going to be 6 1/4 minus 2 3/4. We have to regroup 6 1/4 to be 5 4/4. And then we have to add that extra 1/4. So it's tricky. So look up here. It was 6 1/4. And I'm going to rewrite that. The 6 becomes 5 4/4. Plus, I still have that 1/4. And then they kind of showed that for us right over here. There we go. So they're showing us, instead of writing 6 1/4, we could have written 5 4/4 plus 1/4. Now we have to subtract 2 3/4. Well, I have to put together my 5 4/4 plus 1/4. And so altogether, that makes 5 5/4 minus 2 3/4. And so they've rewritten the problem down here. Now we can subtract our fractions, because once we have all of our common denominators, and we now can subtract. And so we subtract 5 minus 3 equals 2, and our denominator stays the same. Now we go back and we subtract our whole numbers. 5 minus 2 equals 3. So our answer is 3 2/4. Oh, but wait a second. That's not written in proper form. We need to reduce that to 3 1/2. Okay, so Taylisha, did you follow all that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because these are tricky. The first problem is 3 1/4 minus 3/4. So our problem is the denominator is in fourths for both of them. So that is good news. But the problem is we have 1 minus 3, and we can't do that. They're not going to let us have negative numbers yet. So we can't do 1 minus 3. We're going to have to borrow some fourths from our whole number. So why don't you see if you can do that?
Okay. Would it be 2 1/4?
That would require me paying attention. Okay, so you are really close. You are
Okay.
super close. Let me see how much I have hints here. Okay.
2. Okay.
So the top number, 3 1/4, could be rewritten as 2 5/4 because I was going to have I borrowed 1, so that was like 4/4 plus another 1/4. So I rewrote it as 2 5/4. And then from that, I'm going to subtract 3/4. So what's my answer going to be?
2 1/2.
You are awesome. That is correct. 2 2/4, but you were right. That's not the right form. We would reduce
Oh,
it to
reduce it. I knew I should have reduced it.
You did great. You did fantastic. That was a tough problem. And this one's a tough problem too. Try this one. 5 minus 2 1/2.
Okay. Is it a half?
No, not quite.
No.
How did you rewrite the 5? Because you had to regroup. You had to rewrite that 5 a different way. What did you come up with for that?
I came up with 4 5/2.
You were really close.
I think it
Go
should
ahead.
be
What should it have been?
4 2/2 minus
That's
2.
it.
Okay.
That's what it should have been. 4 2/2. So now go ahead and finish it out from there.
Okay. Two and a half.
Perfect. Nice. See, you can do it. It's a little tricky. Let me see if I can get my
Yeah.
screen. It takes time. And the more you practice over and over, the easier, the better your brain's going to remember. But ultimately, you got the correct answer.